Imagine a quiet afternoon in a bustling city center, where a single cough in a crowded subway car sets off a chain reaction that ripples through entire neighborhoods. Measles is often dismissed as a childhood rite of passage, a mere inconvenience of itchy red spots and a fever. Yet, in reality, it remains one of the most contagious viruses known to humanity. Before we dive into the science behind this, please note, this content is for informational purposes only and does not replace professional medical advice. Always consult a qualified healthcare provider for personal health concerns. When an outbreak ignites, the speed of transmission is staggering. Because the virus can linger in the air for up to 2 hours after an infected person has left a room, you could walk into a space, breathe the air, and unknowingly contract the illness without ever seeing the person who carried it. Research suggests that for every single person infected, up to 18 others can catch the virus if they lack immunity. It is not just about the rash, it is about the way this pathogen systematically strips away the body's established defenses. Many people today have never witnessed the severe complications that measles can trigger, largely because of the success of modern immunization programs. This distance from the disease has led to a false sense of security, causing some to forget that before the vaccine was introduced in the 1960s, millions of children were hospitalized or lost their lives to complications every year. Studies indicate that the virus does more than just cause a temporary illness. It can induce immune amnesia, effectively wiping the memory of the immune system and leaving the body vulnerable to other infections for months or even years afterward. As we look at the mechanics of how this virus operates, it becomes clear that measles is far more than a skin condition. It is a systemic challenge to the human body that requires us to look closely at the underlying biology. Let's move forward to uncover the biological pathway this virus takes once it finds a host. To grasp the gravity of this condition, we must first look at the virus itself, a member of the paramyxovirus family. At its core, measles is a master of infiltration, specifically targeting the respiratory tract. It thrives in the tiny, suspended droplets that linger in the air long after an infected person has left a room. Research suggests that this pathogen is so highly specialized that it can remain suspended in the environment for up to 2 hours, turning a seemingly empty space into a zone of potential exposure. Once these viral particles are inhaled, they don't just sit on the surface of the airway. The virus utilizes a complex mechanism to fuse its outer envelope with the membrane of your healthy cells, effectively hijacking their internal machinery. It turns your own biological structures into factories, forcing them to replicate viral genetic material at an incredible speed. Studies indicate that this process is remarkably efficient, allowing the virus to establish a foothold before the immune system even recognizes an intruder is present. This is where the infection transitions from a localized annoyance into a systemic event. By traveling through the blood, the virus gains access to nearly every organ system in the body. It isn't just affecting the lungs. It is actively seeking out immune cells, essentially creating a temporary window of vulnerability that leaves the body susceptible to secondary complications. It doesn't require direct physical contact, it simply requires shared air. This efficiency is precisely why public health monitoring remains so rigorous. By understanding how this virus bridges the gap from a single droplet to a systemic infection, we can begin to see why the body reacts with such intensity. As we look at how the body fights back, we start to uncover why this battle often takes such a heavy toll on our internal defenses. But the toll this battle takes isn't limited to the internal struggle within one person. It is amplified by the virus's remarkable ability to thrive long after an infected individual has left a room. Research suggests that it can remain suspended in the air for up to 2 hours, lingering in microscopic aerosols that drift through hallways and common spaces. Even when these particles settle, they cling to surfaces, maintaining their potency on doorknobs, desks, and shared equipment. You simply need to walk into the space they occupied shortly before. This efficiency in transmission creates a significant challenge for those whose bodies are ill-equipped to mount a robust defense. We see this most clearly in unvaccinated children, whose immune systems have not yet been primed to recognize the virus's specific signature. The impact is equally profound for pregnant women. Medical professionals observe that pregnancy naturally alters immune function, which can make a measles infection far more aggressive than it would be in a healthy, non-pregnant adult. Beyond these groups, we must consider those living with immunocompromised conditions. For an individual undergoing chemotherapy, someone living with an autoimmune disorder, or those managing chronic health issues that suppress immune response, the virus is not just a temporary illness, it is a formidable threat that their bodies may struggle to contain. Because their internal defenses are already occupied or diminished, they are significantly more susceptible to the secondary infections that often follow a measles diagnosis. It is not merely about the individual infection, it is about the collective environment we inhabit. By recognizing the mechanics of how the virus survives and who it strikes hardest, we begin to see the necessity of shielding those who cannot protect themselves. As we move forward, we will examine how the virus specifically targets the very cells designed to protect us, effectively turning our own immune system against itself. Beyond this initial subversion of our internal sentinels, the clinical journey of measles unfolds with a haunting, predictable rhythm. Once the virus has secured its territory, the body begins to signal its distress in stages, a progression that medical professionals often describe as a classic, multi-act performance of infection. The cough is often harsh and persistent, signaling the virus's irritation of the respiratory tract. Coryza, or the medical term for a severe, runny, and congested nose, further facilitates the shedding of the virus into the air. Simultaneously, conjunctivitis, the inflammation of the thin membrane covering the eyes, adds a distinct sensitivity to light, often leaving the eyes red and watery. As the infection gains momentum, researchers have identified a hallmark sign that appears inside the mouth, usually a day or two before the external skin changes manifest. These are known as Koplik spots. To the untrained eye, they might look like tiny grains of white sand scattered against a reddened, inflamed background on the inner lining of the cheeks. Then, the most visible phase arrives. The rash, which typically begins at the hairline and slowly migrates downward, is not merely a surface irritation, it is a visual representation of the immune system's intense struggle against a systemic invader. It starts as flat, red blotches that eventually merge into larger, raised patches, covering the face, neck, and eventually the trunk and limbs. It is important to understand that this physical manifestation is not the end of the battle, but rather a turning point. While the appearance of the rash often indicates that the body is mounting a robust response, it also signals that the virus has achieved widespread dissemination throughout the system. The sheer intensity of this process highlights why medical professionals emphasize the importance of monitoring for complications during this specific window of time. To truly grasp the gravity of this infection, we must look beyond the visible surface and investigate how the virus compromises the very architecture of our immune memory. Given that the virus leaves such a lasting footprint on our internal defenses, the most effective strategy is to prevent the encounter from happening in the first place. This is where the MMR vaccine stands as our most robust shield. By introducing a weakened version of the virus to the body, this immunization trains our immune system to recognize and neutralize the threat without the risks associated with a natural infection. Clinical data consistently demonstrates that 2 doses of the vaccine provide high levels of protection, effectively creating a perimeter of immunity that keeps the virus at bay. However, if an infection does take hold, our medical approach shifts from prevention to supportive management. It is important to understand that there is no specific antiviral medication capable of wiping out the measles virus once it has established itself. Instead, the focus is entirely on bolstering the body's own resilience while it fights the battle. Medical professionals recommend a strategy centered on comfort and stability. Hydration is perhaps the most critical component, as the high fevers associated with the illness can lead to rapid fluid loss. Beyond basic hydration, research suggests that vitamin A supplementation can be a powerful ally. Studies indicate that measles can cause a significant drop in a patient's vitamin A levels, potentially worsening the severity of the symptoms and increasing the risk of complications. By administering this supplement, clinicians aim to protect the health of the eyes and the respiratory tract, effectively shortening the duration of the illness and reducing the likelihood of lasting damage. This approach is not about curing the virus directly, but rather about providing the body with the specific resources it needs to sustain its defense long enough to clear the infection naturally. While this supportive care is essential, we must acknowledge that even with the best protocols, the virus can leave behind a complex legacy. As we look at the aftermath of the infection, we begin to uncover the most profound aspect of measles, how it resets our biological clock and changes the way we interact with the world around us. This phenomenon, often described as immune amnesia, reveals the true reach of the measles virus. When the pathogen enters the body, it doesn't just cause a temporary illness, it systematically targets the very cells responsible for retaining the blueprints of past infections. Essentially, the virus wipes the slate clean, erasing the immunological memories your body has painstakingly built up over years of exposure to other common bugs. Because of this, a child who has survived measles may suddenly become vulnerable to illnesses they had previously overcome, such as pneumonia or common influenza, because their internal defense system has effectively forgotten how to recognize these recurring threats. Recent scientific investigations have highlighted the gravity of this immune reset, showing that the period of heightened susceptibility can persist for years after the initial infection has cleared. This finding shifts our understanding of measles from a self-limiting childhood illness to a systemic disruptor of long-term health. It underscores why the protection provided by vaccination is so profound. Not only does it prevent the primary infection, but it also preserves the integrity of our broader immune landscape. Maintaining high levels of herd immunity is not merely a strategy for containment, it is a vital safeguard for the collective strength of our communities. When vaccination rates remain robust, we create a barrier that stops the virus from gaining a foothold, thereby shielding the most vulnerable among us from both the immediate consequences of the disease and the lingering, invisible damage of immune amnesia. As we look toward the future of global health, the goal remains clear. We must prioritize the stability of our immunization programs to ensure that this disease remains a relic of the past rather than a recurring threat to our developmental milestones. By sustaining these efforts, we protect the immunological history of every individual. In summary, measles is far more than a skin-deep ailment. It is an aggressive challenger to the immune system that can leave a person defenseless against other pathogens for years. Protecting yourself and those around you through timely vaccination is the most effective way to prevent this erasure of immunity and keep our communities resilient. This content is for informational purposes only. If you found this information helpful, consider sharing it with someone who might benefit from understanding the lasting impact of measles on our immune health.